More than 20 years or so ago, I saw an interview with game creators that worked on Command & Conquer Red Alert 2, still one of my favorite video games ever. And they said that if you wanted to make a good sequel or a remake of something, you need to abide to the rule of 3. And by that they mean is if you create a new version of something, 1/3 of your product should be almost exactly the same. Then the other third of your product should be exactly the same stuff as the first product, but brought in a new and fresh way. And then the final 33% of your second version of something should be absolutely, completely new stuff. And it seems that is exactly what Kobold Press did with their remake or their new version of the Old Margreve. Hi there fellow roleplayers and game masters, my name is Mr. Taralsk, and today I want to talk about my absolute all-time favorite book from Kobold Press, which is Tales of the Old Margreve. Well, actually I don't really want to talk about this one, I want to talk about the new one, which is not called Tales of the Old Margreve, it's actually just called The Old Margreve, which is perfectly fine, because this book is more about like the Old Margreve in general, while this book is more a adventure book. Now, they both are kind of the same book, but also in a completely different way, and this just landed on my doorstep yesterday, so I've been flipping through it, looking at a lot of stuff, but I haven't read it cover to cover, so this is not a review, this is not anything like that, this is just me giving you some early impressions about this, but also, in the meantime, I'm trying to answer some questions that I posted it on Facebook in the Midgard Facebook page group thing, and there's some questions there, what's new, what's old, and what's all of that, so I want to kind of talk about that right now. In this video, I want to talk about, first of all, what you get for your money if you end up buying this, and then I want to take a look at the PDF and maybe even like both PDFs to kind of compare what's new, what's old, and what's revived. First and most important thing that I want to talk about is who is this book for, because I personally think that it is for a certain particular amount of people, but it also at the same time isn't for the other certain particular amount of people. Just try to hear me out here. This is a completely new book, although it has a lot of the content from Tales of the Old Margreve and its player's guide, because that is in essence what's happening here. They've rewritten a bunch of this stuff, reprinted a bunch of this stuff, reused a bunch of this stuff from the player's guide and Tales of the Old Margreve. They revitalized it, or whatever you want to say, and they put it in here. Now, this thing is 250 pages thick, while this thing is only 200 pages thick, but this has all of the player options that this one doesn't, that this one needed the player guide for. Am I still making sense? Now, the main difference here is, and this is really important for you to remember, this one was written for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. So all of the stat blocks, all of the player options, all of the other stuff is all 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, which is absolutely great. If you're playing 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons and you already own this thing and you're not planning to move on to Tales of the Valiant, I don't see any use for you to buy this. And I don't personally think Kobold Press has intended for you to buy the new one, because it is designed for Tales of the Valiant. Now, don't get me wrong, it is mostly 90-80% backwards compatible with 5th edition, but the player options in here and the monster stat blocks are all for Tales of the Valiant. Now, monster stat blocks are completely backwards compatible, no problem. You can use all of the monsters, all of the adventures in here, magic items, like 90% of the stuff in here you can just use for 5th edition, but it is absolutely true that stat blocks look a little bit different than 5th edition, but it is in the player options where things are completely different. I will zoom in on that when we take a look at the PDF, but I just wanted to get that out of the way. This is a Midgard book designed for Tales of the Valiant, which is great. I really like that Kobold Press is merging their Midgard campaign setting and their Midgard books with their very own tabletop RPG. I really absolutely like that as an active Tales of the Valiant player. Now, let's just quickly talk about what you get for your money before we take a look at the PDF and just compare one or two things from the old one with the new one and that kind of stuff, right? So, Tales of the Old Margreve in a new jacket, a new front cover, and they used the front cover of the old one as the back cover of this one. Right here, the back one with the old bear and the creatures and everything, that's the back cover of this. And this one also comes back in this book. There's a lot of art from the previous book that comes back in this one, but there is also also brand spanking new stuff. And I have to say, it is absolutely an update. This book is, in terms of quality of the paper, high gloss, high colors pop paper, new artwork, the way it is, the way it is laid out, if that is even a word, like the layout and all of that stuff. It is just new, it is fresh, it is everything you want from an Old Margreve book. Yeah, it just feels modern. On top of that, it comes with this, I think the first one came with this as well, Old Margreve map, with all like the key locations of the Margreve, and then with Levosha, is that the way you pronounce it? Levosha, which is like one little town that sits on the edge of the Old Margreve, that kind of stuff, which are some important locations for the adventures. Now, from the back, let's just quickly read from the back, and then I will give you my early opinions on what is on the back. So, brace yourself for a journey through the Old Margreve, a legendary forest with a mind for adventure. This setting guide and adventure path revitalizes the Margreve Forest with new adventures, new art, and new maps. It revitalizes the Margreve Forest. That is basically what they went for. They have a lot of the old stuff rewritten kind of, but also a bunch of new stuff. So 4 lineages, including the new and powerful bear folk, is in here. 4 new heritages, including the Delver, Forest Bastion, and Always. I don't know if that's as backgrounds was in this one. I need to double check if that was in this one. 16 subclasses, including new wildlife bards, verdant druid, and more. Over 60 new spells and magic items, including expanded rituals, and a complete story arc and adventure path guiding players from level 1 all the way up to level 10. Now, there's a few things about this book that I really want to say, because for me, there's 2 things that they left out that I kind of wish they would have left in. Personally. So here it is, the PDF to the Old Margreve with the insane cool cover, one of my favorite villains, or I don't know, friendly people, if your party makes her friendly, is the, and here it is, the Old Margreve PDF, the new one, the one that has just been released or just landed on my doorstep or whatever. It only landed on my doorstep yesterday, so again, this is an early impressions video with Baba Yaga on the cover and her 3 horsemen in the back. And it took me a whole long while to actually see this, but these are feet. These are not trees, these are feet of Baba Yaga's hut, because Baba Yaga's hut can spawn these chicken-like feet, and then she can run through the world very quickly and jump from one continent to the other, basically, with her hut, with this enormous feet, which is an incredible cover. Baba Yaga remains to be one of my favorite villains, and I've ran so many people through the Old Margreve, and I've ran them into Baba Yaga so many times. I really love it. So now the table of contents is the first thing that I want to quickly talk about. Is, as you can see, chapter 1, the Ancient Forest. All of the information about the Ancient Forest is still here, meaning that it kind of still works the same, but it also doesn't. I want to talk about some things that they left out that I would rather had them leave in, but that's just my humble opinion. There's the basics here are basically the same as Tales of the Old Margreve. Now, if you bought Tales of the Old Margreve, the first one, something that in this book, the table of contents is just a few pages of information about the forest itself, which to me is the main attraction of this book personally, because this forest has a mind of its own. This forest is a forest that does things to people. I want to dive deeper into that in a bit. And then there were all of the adventures. With this, there's first an entire chapter, which is, by the way, there's more information here than there is in the original one, about the Ancient Forest. And then there are all of the player options. And it used to be so that if you bought this one and you wanted player options, you should also buy this one, the Player's Guide. Now, all of these player options, there are a few new ones in here. For example, the Bear Folk was not in the original one. was not in here. There's other things in here. I think there is another heritage that wasn't in here, which is basically a background and that kind of stuff. So Kobold Press uses lineages and heritages for Tales of the Valiant, meaning that you don't pick a race. So they have a few races in here that they call races, but now they're called lineages, and then you also pick a heritage. Subclasses, most of them are the same, but, and this is really important, they're all designed for Tales of the Valiant in this book. The originals are designed for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, but these are designed for Tales of the Valiant. And I want to we will zoom into the Courser Mage, which is one of my favorite classes that I separately reviewed on my channel a long time ago, to kind of show you what I mean by that, right? And then if you scroll down, you also have, you have all of the adventures. Now, also, a ton of these adventures are exactly the same as the original. But, like one of my favorites, Grandmother's Fire, is still here. Maybe it's called, Grandmother's Fire is still in here, which is the one where they run into Baba Yaga, which is one that I ran like 4 or 5 times already. But there's one in here, and I need to... The Vengeful Heart. And the Vengeful Heart is not in this one. And I cannot tell you how many times I've ran the Vengeful Heart, and I cannot tell you how fun it has always been. And somebody ran it for me before I started running it for my players. It's such a great one-shot, and I cannot wrap my head around why they decided to leave it out. Now, they have to make decisions. They're the writers, they're the designers. I'm not saying they did a bad job or whatever. They probably had good reasons for that. But I personally, from a super personal standpoint, cannot make sense of it, because it's such a great adventure. I'm glad Grandmother's Fire is still in there, because yeah, that's all about Baba Yaga, and she's on the cover, so that just makes a lot of sense. And then the book begins with a bunch of, like, as you can see, this one is brand spanking new artwork with a Beer Domain Cleric in here. They are not in the book itself, I think. Cleric. No, this is the Hunt domain, but this is so a Beer Domain Cleric. I love the Beer Domain Cleric. This might be a hint that the Beer Domain Cleric is getting a Tales of the Valiant reskin or something like that. Who knows? Now, as you might know, one of the main attractions, and for me personally, the main attraction, is the Old Margreve itself as an entity. The Old Margreve is a living and breathing forest. It is a thing with a mind of its own, and that is what I really like about it. And you might remember the first book talking about character status within the Margreve, or with the Margreve. And there's this entire section on, and it's a small section in the first book, and I really expanded on it on this book, but I also left something out that I just like a little bit less. But the main idea is that your characters can do all kinds of things to either gain status with the Margreve or lose status with the Margreve. And for example, there is 5 status levels. Sorry, there's level 0, which is indifferent. I'm going to try to zoom in here and see if you guys can still see this, or move this over. Indifferent. Then if you do good things, it becomes intrigued, friendly, welcoming, or vexed, unfriendly, and hostile. And there's a bunch of stuff that the Margreve does in order to make your life easier or harder. And a lot of this stuff has always been like really vague stuff for me. For example, when my party was once fleeing from an Etten within the Margreve Forest, and one person just tripped over a tree branch, and they tripped over a tree branch again, and then got slapped in the face by a tree branch from the person in front of them, letting that one go. Everybody has been through that. And then that kind of small stuff kept happening to them, and they didn't really know why. But of course, they were chopping down trees and that kind of stuff the session before, so they just gained or lost status with the Margreve. And I've always like kept that a secret for the first 2 or 3 sessions, and have the players come up with that on their own, like discover on their own that they have like this status towards the Margreve. Because I don't know, there might be like, they might be fleeing and they want to climb into a tree. For one person, it might be a DC 15 check. For the other person, it's like a DC 17 check, because the tree branch, the first one you can grab, is just a tad bit too high for you. That's the Margreve just like messing or aiding the players with their status. And one thing that the first one did was you started out with a status, and the base of like the more that I think about it, the more it wasn't okay. And I totally get that they changed it, but still, I live a character and status right here. So there was this column on page 6 right here. Trying to show this to you. I hope you can see this. Let me just like quickly, right? There is this column right here, which had player races. All kinds of races were in here. I mean, Alcide, Bearfolk, Centaur, Dracul, Dampier, Elf, Elfmarked, Arena. There's like a shit ton of races. And yeah, basically, right? And then also a class. So, for example, if you were an elf, you got a +2 on their status. And if you then were a wizard, you also get a +1. So an elf wizard would be like really high up in the status chart, right? So the forest would do everything in its power, almost anything in its power in order to help out the players. That player, but you could also be, let's say you were a Gearforged. A Gearforged already starts with a -4, which is inherently a little bit racist. I mean, I need to admit that it is a little bit racist, but it was also a really good way to start off and a really good way for your player characters to come up with reasons why the forest shouldn't think like that, because the forest is an entity of its own, and it probably has been through thousands, if not millions of years of seeing, for example, I don't know, orcs might just be 90% of orcs might come into the forest only to chop trees and cause mayhem and shit and flowers and that kind of stuff. So the forest kind of looks down on orcs, right? And then it is up to the player character who plays an orc who is like, no, but I'm better, I'm an orc druid, and because they're being a druid, they already have like a little bit higher status because the point system. But yeah, that's just, I think that would just invited really cool role playing, and they kind of left that out. Right now, you so the old status level details, blah 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 blah. So let me see, there is nothing in a way of what you start off with, if I'm not mistaken. I think it is up to the game master. So as a game master, you can still go off of that kind of information if you want, of course. And you should, as a game master, note what player has what status. But also, the way I would do it from this book is just everybody starts at 0, and during the first session, after the first session, I give a number to the players. Some players might cast a lot of healing spells, which is something the forest really likes, while the other player might cast a lot of like fire spells, which is something the forest really doesn't like. Otherwise, a really well rewritten section on like helping and hindering. There's like friendly Old Margreve effects, unfriendly effects, welcoming effects, hostile effects, that kind of stuff. So let's just roll on the friendly chart once. Let's just do that. Where's my dice? I need my dice. My dice. I need the d6. So let's roll a d6. Roll a d. The flora and fauna of the forest open flowers at the right moment, turn their heads at the right angle, or reveal details about themselves in other subtle ways to the PCs. All intelligence nature checks made within the forest gain a +2 bonus. So that's something that happens. That the forest does in order to help the players. They might be looking for something, an edible mushroom. Now they can find edible mushrooms much easier. But there could also be a hostile Old Margreve effect. I don't know. An orc who keeps casting fire spells. When given the opportunity to flee or attack, beasts in the forest always attack the PCs. Now, there's two ways of going about this, because they say right here, attack the PCs. You could have a group status score, which is like might be like the medium of all of these scores. But I personally am more about giving each player a score, because that really spawns these funny moments where one player jumps over a cliff and they do it like with ease because they can grab a branch and then swing to the other side, and then the other player tries to run from the same cliff, and somehow for them it seems that the cliff is just like 2 centimeters wider, and they just I don't know, they don't die or anything. They just like, I don't know, they bruise their ankle on the landing or something like that. That's what makes the Old Margreve. That's the main attraction, to my opinion, of the Old Margreve. Then there's the player options. And as I said, there's a bunch of lineages. The Bear Folk is completely new. The Bear Folk is right here with this very, very insanely cool looking artwork. So there is a lineage in Tales of the Valiant. Pick a lineage and you pick a heritage. The lineage is the blood you come from, and the heritage is the way you were raised, in short. But all of these, like the Irina, are not new. The Piney is one that I reviewed and talked about like completely separately on one of my videos early Mr. Tarosk YouTube. I talked about this. I really like the Piney, but right now they became lineages. They are not called races, because you pick a lineage and a heritage. So there's the Delver heritage. There is Hiveheim heritage. Monolith heritage. I don't think these were in here. Were these in here? I just need to double check, because I don't think, are these like background? Were these like backgrounds? Barbarian, Ranger, and the magic item. No, there was just Elside, Arena, and Piney. That's all backgrounds right here. Forest Dweller, Feral One, and the there was only one background mirror, the Forest Dweller. So that one is in here, right? Yeah. So there's a bunch of new heritages in here which you can choose. But again, these were all created for Tales of the Valiant, so they are not anymore for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. For example, let's just go to the let's just first take a quick look at the Courser Mage. The Courser Mage is one of my favorite classes. I did a separate video on this. I was like super into the Margreve at a certain point in my early YouTube career. As you can see now, you get an expanded talent list, which wasn't a feature before. But then all of your stuff, like this is all the same stuff you get. It's rewritten for Tales of the Valiant, but also comes at a different level. So if you only have this new book, and you play only 5th edition, your game master is going to have to do some work converting it. That said, the idea and the feeling and everything about the Courser Mage is still exactly the same. It is just for Tales of the Valiant, right? Now, there's also a Wildlife Bard, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the new one? Let me just double check. I know this is just first impressions. Wildlife Bard, yeah. So, bards who align with the College of Wildlife thrive in nature and have a natural connection with animals. These colleges are often on the outskirts of settlements, with one foot in the woods and one in the streets. That's so cool writing, or very good writing. Whether delighting passersby with their dancing squirrel companions, or leading legions of rats away from a settlement, these bards excel at enchanting animals with their performances, driving the creatures to protect allies or attack enemies. I already really like that. There is this dude playing a flute in front of two, is it badgers? Are these badgers? Is that what you call them? Or are these like these stinking animals? I don't know what the English word is for this one. So yeah, you gain the following bardic performance option. Your performance awakens primal fervor in your humanoid allies, bringing them closer to nature and feeling as a unified pack alongside your bestial allies. While your performance lasts, each non-beast ally within range has advantage on the first attack roll it makes each turn. Wow. If at least one of your beast's allies is within 5 feet of the target of the attack and the beast isn't incapacitated. That's really cool. That's some cool stuff right here. You learn to create familiar ritual spell if you don't already know it. The spell doesn't count against your rituals known, and you can cast it as an action. Your familiar is considered a beast, not a construct. And if it dies while you are still alive, it regrows a new body in 1 minute instead of 1 hour. So that is how it works. I was thinking like your allies, bestial allies, where the does a bard get their bestial allies? But I don't know. Yeah, it's from Lasting Familiar, which is something they can cast and they create a beast-like familiar, right? So this is a bard. Let's do one more. You can use an action to magically call to a creature of the natural world to aid you. The creature can be any beast with a challenge rating of 1/4 or less, and it appears in an unoccupied space you can see within 15 foot of you. The called creature is friendly to you and your companions and obeys your verbal commands. In combat, it acts on your initiative counts taking. So basically, you're just like the good version of a ranger from the 2014 Player's Handbook, right? So does the challenge rating increase? It's cool. It's cool. It can help you. You can call out beasts, and I really like that they say the creature can be any beast with a challenge rating of CR 1/4 or less. It doesn't say any beast you choose, but it also doesn't say any beast your GM chooses or at the GM's discretion, which is really good because this way the GM can rule whether the player can choose themselves or give the player a list from what they can choose from, depending on what environment they're in, because in like the Margreve, like tigers, I don't know, no, not tigers, like panthers, for example, displacer beasts, that kind of stuff is in there. Some really weird creatures as well, big moths and big butterflies and that kind of stuff, but you won't see a polar bear in the Margreve. So, yeah. That wouldn't make sense. I really like this bard. This is really cool, subtle, different way to play basically a Beastmaster. And this video is already almost half an hour long, so I'm gonna have to cut this short. I mean, there's so much to talk about, and I definitely, genuinely also want to do a video, like more of a review video, or maybe it will turn into like 2 or 3 videos about the Old Margreve, stuff that I like a little bit less. This guy is still in here, so yeah, all of the creatures that you need for the adventures and that kind of stuff are still, are of course all statted out, and there's lore on them so you can use them and reuse them in your games. So it is a completely standalone book for Tales of the Valiant, right? So yeah, that's all in here. There are magic items in here, there are spells in here, and I want to just, if you're interested in seeing me dive deeper into this book, make sure to hit the thumbs up of this video and also put that in the comments below what exactly you want to see me cover from the new Old Margreve book. So to summarize and at the same time answer a lot of questions from the Facebook post I did on the Midgard group Facebook thing, yes, there is a lot of old stuff from the old book in here. Yes, there's a lot of very brand spanking new stuff in here. Yes, they took some stuff out and tossed it in the garbage bin. Some I like and some I like a little bit less, and yes, there is some old stuff in here that they just rewritten or explained in a better way or just expanded upon. So the Old Margreve is really for people who are actively playing Tales of the Valiant right now, game masters and or players, because it has the entire Margreve Forest with a mind of its own. It has all of the player options, and it has the 10 or 11 adventures that will take you all through the Margreve Forest, leaving out one of my favorite one-shots from Kobold Press ever, but that's just me personally, and that is my first impressions on the new Old Margreve book, and until next video, bye-bye.